Welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of this emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. This is your host, executive and life coach Meredith Oak, with a quick reminder that podcasts are conversations, not consultations, and definitely not medical advice. We're here for informational purposes only. To follow up with our amazing guests, please do check out the show notes, and to stay in the loop with the QBC podcast, join our email list, also linked in the show notes. Back on the podcast this week is the beautiful and profound Joanne Avison. Joanne is the host of the Joanne Avison podcast, but she's also a famous movement specialist and practitioner. She's also an international speaker, artist, educator, and the bestselling author of two books about fascia and fascia anatomy, with an extensive background in yoga. And she has deeply studied the work of Mei-Wen Ho, and so connects the fascia to the idea that we are a liquid crystal matrix in her work. And Joanne is one of those people where you barely need to say anything. You just ask a very simple question, and all of this beautiful, profound knowledge, experience, and information comes pouring out of her. And so I just love to sit there and let it wash over me. It always changes me, and especially it changes how I think about my body. And so we got into some very practical things as well in this conversation. We started out quite profound, even with, she begins with a little reading from Mei-Wen Ho, but we ended up with just some extremely useful, practical tips of things that we can do to remind our body how to remain and stay the way that it's supposed to be. And Joanne even reveals a lot of things that we think are really helpful that we should be doing all the time to the maximum capacity that we can, that she explains might actually potentially be causing harm, and that we should perhaps dial it back a little. So here is Joanne with her extraordinary view of the human body. And it's a really nice bookend to the conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with Irene Lyon. Irene comes from a place of trauma healing in the nervous system, and Joanne comes from a place of yoga and functional movement tied to a new biology understanding of fascia. So anyway, so fun. Listen to both of them. This is a glorious conversation, and I was so happy to have Joanne back on. And of course, please visit bondcharge.com if you need a stopping stuffer or just a little red reading light for yourself to protect your circadian rhythms, which in effect protects every aspect of your health. Bondcharge.com, QBC, in the box at checkout. Enjoy. Joanne Avison, welcome back. Delighted to see you again.
Hey, Meredith. It's just a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So at the end of our last interview, you read an excerpt from the work of Mei-Wen Ho. And I had many messages from people who just said that listening to you read that, brought them to tears, and they felt, they just felt so deeply connected to you and your work, and the fact that you were, bringing Mei-Wen into the conversation and putting her work out there. So I thought we would, as I mentioned, it'd be a beautiful way to start this time. You can read one of your favorite Mei-Wen Ho.
Well, I think Mei-Wen Ho served the world. And, I just think she's one of the unsung heroes of our history. So I'm going to begin here talking about water. So let's just read this. There's two quotes here. I'll read one after the other, and then we can see where we go with that. Is that okay with you, Meredith? Water is essential for life. Yet this simple, ubiquitous chemical compound has remained completely mysterious for centuries, until quite recently. New evidence indicates that liquid water may be quantum coherent, even at ordinary temperatures and pressure. It associates with macromolecules and membranes in a liquid crystalline configuration that enables enzymes and nucleic acids to function as quantum molecular machines that transform and transfer energy at close to 100% efficiency. I have to say that again. I'm really sorry. That is so powerful. We have to say that again.
Yes.
Do you not think?
I think. Yeah. I know, as you're reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman is so brilliant. Okay.
Isn't she? Oh my God. So it's a liquid crystalline configuration, which in my book I'd highlighted because I quoted her. This quote came from my book, that enables enzymes and nucleic acids to function as quantum molecular machines that transform and transfer energy at close to 100% efficiency. Drop the mic. And then she goes on to add, liquid crystalline water at interfaces. So now we're in the in-between, where a cell meets a cell. That's an interface. Also provides the excitation energy that enables it to split into hydrogen and oxygen in photosynthesis, simultaneously generating electricity for intercommunication and for redox chemistry that ultimately powers the entire biosphere. Water, I mean, seriously, water is water is the means, medium, and message of life. Quote, the rainbow within that mirrors the one in the sky. Oh my goodness. Now this comes from her book, Meaning of Life and the Universe, Transforming, and World Scientific Publishing Company in London. And it's chapter 15, Water, the Means, Medium, and Message of Life. It's the opening quotation. And she just goes on to say, and this is a short one, but has to come in, up to 70% of the proteins in the connective tissue consist of collagens that exhibit constant patterns of alignment, as is characteristic of liquid crystals. Collagens have distinctive mechanical and dielectric properties that render them very sensitive to mechanical pressures, changes in pH, inorganic ions, and electromagnetic fields. So, I mean, we can just boof, because what that basically says is the cosmos inside us and the cosmos outside us are intercommunicating liquid crystal matrices that are super sensitive to mechanical pressures, changes in pH, inorganic ions, and electromagnetic fields. I mean, what more do you want in terms of why isn't this subtle level of coherency the foundation of the way we study the human body? Why is separating it up into physical parts and pieces the foundation? 400-year, I think we're under a spell, but I think that we can function as parts, work out those parts, put those parts together, and then build a human. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. You self-organize as an original, completely unique, unicellular being, and you self-organize into the architect that's going to express itself as the architect. Go figure. You literally self-organize the architecture in order to express yourself as the architect, expressing the architect. We all have done that. So the inimitable Meredith Oak has always been the inimitable Meredith Oak. You may have changed your name during your life or whatever, but that is the frequency of you. And Mae Wan Ho goes on to talk about Harold Saxon Barr's work, Yale University professor, many, like 1940s, I believe, talking about L fields, that there's literally a life field around each one of us, an electromagnetic interface that is our imprint, our blueprint, if you will. And we intercommunicate with that to maintain that, even though we obviously change somewhat over the years. But we organize this electromagnetic me-ness, you-ness, they-ness. It's a essence of that person. And everyone's unique. And that way, to me, everyone's always equal and diversity is always included because everyone is the same in that everyone is unique.
Yes.
Well,
I was talking about that with my 10-year-old daughter the other day. She's like, everyone's unique. What did they say? I'm unique. But if everyone's unique, then no one's unique. And I said, no, everyone's unique. We're just all snowflakes.
Yeah.
Each snowflake is
unique.
Different.
Yeah.
So each snowflake is special, but each snowflake is different. So you are unique.
Goodness.
In your uniqueness. She was like, I don't know, Mom, I'm not buying it.
I love her. Wow, what existential drama at the age of 10. No, here's the thing. What makes us all the same is that every single one of us is unique. And what makes us all unique is that not any single one of us is the same. And it's called a paradox. So you go round in a circle, which is the wholeness. The one and the all are the same, ultimately, because they're all unique.
Yes.
You know, we have a phrase in MSIA, and whatever your word is for God, please substitute it here. I use the word God meaning life force, meaning universe, meaning intention, meaning that which is. For me, God is that which is, the isness of the now. And God loves all of its creation, all of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly, including your beautiful daughter. I bet she's gorgeous.
She's very funny. I'll give her that. Okay. So I think, you know, you and I and everybody listening to this, we are all deeply aligned with the idea that the moment has come for us to enter into this new paradigm, the paradigm laid out by May Wen Ho, that you just beautifully articulated with some of her quotes. And the idea of compartmentalizing our bodies, compartmentalizing our connection to life, looking only at biochemistry, which is like a printout of what's going on, but not actually explaining what's happening. So let's say, okay, we've opened the door, we're stepping into this paradigm. What does that mean? What does that look like from your perspective, Joanne? How would we start to think about our bodies and our health and our lives and our relationship?
Well, for the first, my answer to your question overall is this is my way of seeing it's not unique to me by any means, but I don't see us as bodies moving around, having an occasional spiritual experience and sometimes an emotional experience. And sometimes we're sitting thinking hard. We could call that a mental experience. And sometimes we're out having fun and we imagine something amazing, and that's an imaginative experience. I think we are more complete spiritual beings having an experience in Earth School, because at some level we chose that. That's what I believe. Now, I have the most wonderful arguments with John Sharkey because he thinks we get one shot at this and this is it. And I kind of agree, except that for me, one shot is an episode. There's no way we have the wisdom and the awareness that we have in one hit. Somewhere around 100 years. No, give me a break. You can't. There's too much accumulated wisdom in each of us, and I think it resides there if we can access it. And I think it's possible to access it. And I think because this is a liquid crystal matrix, it holds memory everywhere. Now, many years ago, Dean Juhan wrote a book called Job's Body. It's brilliant, in my opinion. And I've met Dean, and he gave me license to quote him, and even gave John Sharkey license to change the quote when we had a fabulous meeting together. And in that, he suggests, as has been suggested, that the strands of fascia that form our architecture, because we self-organize through the liquid crystal medium, the fascial architecture, contains cerebrospinal fluid, which would mean that the idea that we're under the spell of biomechanics is the big spell, but it's drip fed by the idea that we form ourselves in layers embryologically, and those layers are separate. And the ectoderm, the outer layer, ecto means upon, is the brain and the skin. And the endoderm is the gut, endo meaning inside. And the mesoderm is the layer of the meso, the in-between, the muscles. It's not accurate by any means. And I haven't yet found a really skilled, I was going to say student, but really I mean professor of embryology who's been a student of that subject all their life, who believes for 1 nanosecond that the embryo can be explained in 3 layers. They just laugh because it's like, well, it's a bit more complicated than that. Of course it is. But let's just imagine what Jaap van der Waal says. I'm quoting him with all the love in the world because I adore the man and he's been teaching me for the last 15 years or more. That this is our innerness. It's not a mesoderm, it's an interiority. And what the embryo does is it self-organizes miraculously into folds of bioorganic origami that interface with each other. So, for example, the heart starts beating above what's going to become the crown of the head some stages later in this bioorganic origami of this liquid crystal. And this matrix the heart beats above what's going to be the crown. And the crown then, the head grows very much faster than anywhere else in the body and curves round and pushes the heart down to in front of the place it's going to end up, but grows down the back at the same time. And the heart sends circulatory vessels out to the spine. And while the somites are forming the spine down the back, the heart circulatory tubules are moving through this liquid crystal matrix to form the spatialization of the spine organization of the somites from front to back, sides to the sides wrap round it and incorporate it. And the diaphragm forms underneath it to enclose it in a pocket. And then the limb buds and the lung buds, the upper limb buds and the lung buds form. I mean, I'm doing this very rapidly and roughly. It's not like that at all, but it is that sequence. And you start thinking, hang on a second. And then the sides wrap the gut and cool that in underneath the diaphragm. And then the leg buds grow a little bit later, and then the tail reorganizes, and then the face unfolds up from the heart. The point of it describing all that, and I may have described it in our last episode, it's something that fascinates me, is we are heart-centered. Meredith, I think this is so important from a spiritual point of view. Because as heart-centered beings, we begin there. We don't begin spelling our names and working out what kind of embryo we want to be. We don't have a whole discussion. We can't spell it, for God's sake. We come in as unicellular beings, whole and complete, heart-centered. And the liquid crystal matrix emits light and transmits sound. It absorbs light as an electrical, bioelectric imprint in the tissue. And its wrapping, because it's under tension all the time, is like the strings of an orchestra, or the tubes and vessels of the wind section, or the diaphragms of the drums. And that heartbeat, for me, is the conductor of that orchestra. But it's all a liquid crystal matrix with varying degrees of biochemistry. This is where we come into the quantum focus. And all those different biochemistries have different metabolic rates and speeds. So they grow at different rates in different ways. And that's how we differentiate these activations. So what do I mean by that? Well, when the lung buds form around the heart, they pack the heart in very, very densely. They are massaging it and maintaining the sound of its beat. And every time you hear your heartbeat, just be still for a moment and listen, or put your hands on your chest and feel and listen. That's life reminding you that you're you. That sounds unique to you. And the only other creature on this planet that's heard that sound in a way that you never will and never have is if you've had a baby and that baby's grown in utero inside you, and it's grown to the rhythm of your heartbeat. But imagine it's heard it very, very differently to you, much louder. Isn't that amazing? I think it just blows me away. And so that heart-centered you-ness began, your they-ness or he-ness or her, whatever pronouns you want to use, that's absolutely fine. It's the heartbeat that distinguishes you as you. It's a rhythm. It has an exquisite rhyme. It has its own reason. And when we remember that and go back there, we can recognize this configuration, this spiral configuration. The heart, by the way, is a spiral. It's a spiral tube that's doubled up on itself and quadrupled up on itself, but it's a spiral tube. And the most beautiful work by somebody called Terence Wasp, amazing man. And John Sharkey does the most beautiful illustration of this, showing that the heart doesn't actually pump. It sucks and spits by spiraling and tightening and releasing and spiraling and releasing. And that's the blueprint of the entire form. And when we wake up that blueprint through super subtle movement and micro movement, which is where my work gets manifest, we remember rather than learn. And then we can release patterns that we don't need, from sitting too much, forcing ourselves, being against things, animating this form in ways that don't fit us. And then I think we can move better, and that has us feel better. And there's a feedback going in, and the heart becomes aligned with what we're doing, and what we're doing becomes aligned with the heart. And all we're doing is honoring this spiral quantum nature. And it supports us, and we're supporting it, because everything gets easier. And it leaves me with the idea that fascia is the interface. Fascia is the interface of spirit animating the pattern of the matter of us. And pattern
say that again, please.
Fascia for me is so when I see somebody, whether I'm working with them manually or physically moving, what I see, their fascial matrix, it's everywhere. So their shape, their morphology is uniquely them. How does life force transmit through that person? So the fascia is the interface of spirit animating the pattern of the matter of that person. And I recognize that. So when I see you in a crowd at the next conference we go to, or when we're going to come and do a workshop in North America next year, we're planning, and I'm going to walk and go, Meredith, it's you. And I'm going to know you from the other side of the room, because the pattern that's me and the pattern that's you, we've seen each other on video many times. We'll recognize that the pattern of the matter of Meredith. That's what we're already doing. I'm just describing it in more subtle detail. And when people say to me, what is a liquid crystal? You've only got to look on your mobile phone, and you go inside your mobile phone and it says sounds and haptics inside the settings. Haptic means feedback. So the sounds and haptics of this are liquid crystal matrix is an interface, just like your mobile phone. Your mobile phone is stiff and hard and, takes a lot of abuse, and yours is softer and more responsive and more micro aware, but it's also self-organizing. This is not self-organizing. It only appears to be. It actually requires your input. Does that make sense?
Yes. Wow. So when we think of ourselves, and I don't even want to say our bodies anymore, because it now doesn't seem like an adequate word. When we think of our beings in the way that you've just described, you can't help but enter into any kind of action, but through a lens of, to me, deep reverence. However,
Amen. Yeah.
Most of the time, when we think about taking care of our bodies. It's like, okay, I'm going to take this action to get this result. I'm going to lift these weights to make this muscle bigger. And my doctor said that, a woman at my stage of life needs to lift weights. So I'll lift weights, or I'll do some yoga to relax, and then I'll do some Pilates because it's fun. And then what are we missing when we enter in through that door?
Great question. Well, in many ways, there's a lot of things that we're not missing. We've got some guidance, we've got compatibility, we've got other people to connect with. They're all very important things. And when you think of the human form as this orchestration of force transmission, so just think about that for a minute. You're walking around.
God, sorry, you have to say that again. You keep dropping these gems.
Sorry.
The force transmission. Just say that.
So you are a force transmission. Your body's about force transmission. So you stand on the ground and you are ground reaction force. You've got gravity pulling you down and you're coming up. Exactly the right balance. Otherwise, gravity would, if there was more, you'd be stuck to the ground. And if there was less, you'd be floating off in space. Yeah? So we've got this perfect balance of gravity, which is a force. And we have something called ground reaction force. So every time we walk, the gravity comes back at us. It's another whole discussion about gravity as light and the fact we don't fall, the ground comes up to meet us and all things like that, which is fascinating. But let's stay with the fact that forces are moving through us. So if you and I grip our hands into a fist, we're squeezing our hands. And we talk about grip strength as a mark of ability as you age, for example. Or if you can stand on one leg, that's an ability to balance, especially if you can do it with your eyes closed. And there's all these little tests of ability and agility as we age. But when we do what you were talking about, and trust me, I love weight training and I love Pilates and I love yoga and I'm a yoga therapist, so I use it. But if we do that from a protocol-driven worksheet, i.e., I've learnt my Pilates repertoire, or I've learnt my yoga sequences, or I know which muscle I'm working on in the gym today. We're having a leg day or a back day or a, arm day. We tend not to talk about I'm going to work on my delts. We tend to say I'm having an arm day, but it's that kind of thing. So we isolate and work. It doesn't make sense of how the body experiences itself if that's all you do. Because then it's like we switch off when we're unloading the dishwasher or going shopping and lifting shopping out of the car or picking up our kids or tucking them into bed and leaning forward over the bed. How do you do that? Do you do that in a way that hurts your back or in a way that helps you? Do you see what I'm saying? And we get stories of people have slipped over in the shower, or I couldn't believe it. I just turned in my armchair and picked up a magazine and my back went. And, we know why, because it's a postural thing. But what I find in my experience, Meredith, is that we think of movement. If you say to a client, for example, can you talk to me about your movement in your day? They will almost invariably name the number of miles they run, kilometers they swim, classes they attend, sessions they go to in the gym. Those are the 4 categories if you say movement. I have never in 30 years of practice had anyone say to me, I sit at my desk for 8 hours. I sleep in my bed for 8 hours. That's 16 out of 24. For the other 8, I mostly sit. They've never said that to me. They tell me about the hour they go to the gym, the 2 hours they do of Pilates a week, the hour of yoga they do when they can because they like it, but they don't get much time to do it. And it's not as strong as Pilates, so it doesn't do as much good. And we correlate sweat and exhaustion and post-exercise, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, with achievement. And for me, that's missing a great big piece, which is subtle micro movement that has the body ready and able to do those things and recover from them without DOMS and without the issues that we give the body when we sit most of the time and work out intensely for 1 out of 24 or 48 or 72 hours. So it's like, what are you doing all the time?
Right. What is all the movement in between the official movement?
There you go.
What is all the rest of the movement?
Yeah. And I'll give you a lovely little piece, a little freebie. I'm sitting here with an oval ball that isn't blown up much. It's maybe 10, 15%. And I've got a lovely high back chair. And obviously I'm sitting on a podcast having a fabulous time talking to you. So I don't want to think about what I'm doing, but I'm not sat still. That's between my sacrum and my chair. And I've already moved it twice. And it's just, so I'm micro moving as I drive my car, sit at my desk, work at my desk.
Oh, so that's just like a mostly deflated, like playground ball or workout ball, small, but you put it in between your back and the chair. And because it's fluid, your body is continually adjusting around it. So your body is clocking that as movement. Because we're liquid crystal. We're not machines that need giant, big movements.
I don't want my joints oiled. I want my joints reminded that they're a liquid crystal matrix. Not too much.
Oh, so good.
And you can really take this to a level of refinement that is beyond. I mean, we work with elite athletes, and I'm talking from, national rugby teams to ballet dancers who are in their teens, 10, 11, 12. And what we're getting them to do is incorporate this consciousness. Obviously, this is much more extensive program than just putting a ball in your back, but the ball in your back is a massive key. I have so many people, I can't tell you. I say to people, if you've got to drive distances or take your kids to school, don't go, I've just got to take the kids to school. That doesn't count. Then I'll go to my yoga or my Pilates.
Yeah,
if you're in
that's
that car,
what I do every day.
So you're in that car. How long are you in that car, Meredith? Every day?
Depends on the day, but on the day depends on the day. But some days,
traffic.
Probably, hour and a half. Once you add it all up over the day, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there.
Okay. So if you have one of these in your car and you push yourself into your car seat and you take some time to make sure that you're at the right distance from the pedals and da-da-da-da-da. And when you drive to drop the kids to school, you put the ball between your sacrum and the seat. And when you drive back, you put it between the back of your waist and the seat. And then you might sit on it. And then you've got to adjust the seat for your feet. And then you might put it between your shoulder blades. And some people I know have it a little bit more inflated, just you get it right. And you play with it. So you're never slumped in a chair. You're literally whispering to your body, come on, how are you doing? What's that? And it'll talk back. All you've got to do is tune in. That's why MMIA stands for Myofascial Magic in Action, which is my new book. And I think it stands for the movement of magical inner awareness, because this liquid crystal talks and it loves nothing more than to tell you its story. And usually we don't listen. And so it shouts and we call that pain. And it goes, Psst, I hurt, pay attention. Because what happens when you get a pain? You go and do something about it.
Yeah. Like, I'll get a massage, or I'll do the thing, or
I'll go and see the physical therapist, or I'll go whatever. And then what happens is people come and see me or come and see my colleagues, depending on whatever it is, whether it's a chiropractor, an osteopath, a physical therapist, neuromuscular therapist, structural integrator, whatever. I'm not making anyone better or worse than a homeopath. Whatever it is that's your thing, I'm not making anyone right or wrong, because I think it comes down to quite subtle frequency between the practitioner and the client. Then again, we're in a resonance quantum field. And there's research about that. There's masses of it. That when you resonate with the practitioner, it'll work because you found what you need. Yes. Well,
so interesting you say that. I was just I had a guest on called Kelly Ritter, who works with people with anxiety. And she said, honestly, like the outcome is based on whether you're in resonance with the person you're working with.
100%.
So that could be a counselor or a body worker, or you are not just interacting with the modality or the approach that they're providing, you're interacting with their liquid crystal and its emanations. Yes.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I was forgetting it was a podcast and waving at you and ticking the air.
No, I know.
Sorry. To those of you listening, Meredith's gazing at me for an answer. I'm so sorry. So yeah, exactly. And this is where I think it's so important that as if we're a practitioner, we forgive ourselves when a client is not in resonance with us. You know, we do have this idea, and I come across it all the time because I train trainers in several modalities of movement and manual therapy. And the first thing I do is have them own that they really desperately, desperately want to fix people. And I just love that. That is just such a statement of service. And truly, they want the person that comes in the door to be healed. Now, some people have different motives. Some people have an agenda and ulterior motives. Fine. You get that in every field. But mostly in the work of the healing arts, and I put movement teachers into that category, and they are art forms because every different medium can be beautiful, and every different medium depends what colors you're using. And we can forgive ourselves for just sometimes meeting that person that absolutely doesn't resonate with us. And I mean, I remember, let me give you an example. I had a client once who had a particular pain in the hips, and I knew I was only going to see them once and possibly twice because they were traveling a long way, and a friend of mine brought them to see me. And so I said, I can do quite a deep treatment for you. I think it might make a difference. But it is deep. Bring it on. This guy was saying, I just bring it on. I can take anything. I don't like all soft treatment. Okay. So it's a deep soft tissue treatment, and it's going to be quite demanding, but it'll make a difference to this particular pain. I had a lot of experience of this particular type of low back pain. And so I did the work, and he got up from the table, and you could tell by the way his upper body just lifted, the way his breath changed, his whole demeanor. He walked around the table. He felt amazing. And he said that. And then 24 hours later, he said, oh, no, it's all gone back the way it was before. And I thought, sorry. And as I've been working, I've been listening to him and thinking, this guy doesn't talk like somebody who desperately wants to get rid of this pain. He only wanted to tell me about all the times it didn't work. That's all he wanted to do. Now, I have to be careful with this because very often I have the people that everything else didn't work. And then structural integration is the thing that makes the difference. But it's the way sometimes you just get this sixth sense that someone's not actually listening. They're not actually receiving. They actually are more married to their narrative than to the difference that can be made to them. They would have to surrender that narrative were it to be changed in that session. So I got the feedback, oh, nothing's changed. Thanks very much. And I was really curious because there was no recrimination. There was no challenging of me. There was no disappointment. There was just like, ticked another box. There's another one that doesn't work. So I did a little bit of investigating, and I found out that this person was on a particular disability benefit that left them free to not work. And it was so much money. They were renting out their house, living with their girlfriend who'd brought them to me, that they could travel to Spain every other week. Now, that person has an investment in not releasing the pain. That pain's their best friend. It's a money spinner. It's meaning that they're getting a legitimate amount of money every week for doing nothing. Okay, fair enough. Good for you. It's not a price I would want to pay. But we as practitioners have to forgive ourselves when we can't fix someone because it may not be that they came for that. So when there's a resonance of listening and inquiring and not knowing, and when you have in your toolbox a repertoire of micro movements in a very particular sequence so that you can kind of restore the original blueprint, and it's such subtle work, mostly people are like, really? Is that all you want me to do? Sorry, I need a workout. You're like, yeah, but just trust me. You can get them through that journey to a point of refinement where they balance, where they can do extraordinary things without paying the price because you've honored the liquid crystal nature of the matrix. You've whispered to it. You haven't yelled at it. You haven't demanded that it perform under whatever circumstances. It's not protocol driven. It's profile driven. So it means I wouldn't do with you what I might do with your daughter. I'd give you completely different plans because you've got completely different dialects. Your bodies speak completely different languages. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's very profound, Joanne. It's very profound. And there is a theme that I've been hearing from people who understand the nervous system and understand quantum biology, and the theme is small movements. It's like a small, gentle, I can't think of a word that encapsulates it properly, but not these big, heavy, repetitive things, but subtle. There, that's the word I want, maybe, right? It's like, what are we doing with our liquid crystal on a subtle level? It's whether we're doing movements on purpose or whether we're just washing the dishes.
Exactly. And the thing is, so we do a lot of movements without thinking, and we need to, because movement isn't an intellectual process. So just think about when you taught your child to walk. You didn't. She taught herself, actually, but you know that. You observed your child teaching herself to walk, for example. You didn't stand and yell, bend your left knee. No, that's not your left knee. That's your right knee. The other one, bend it. You know which is which. Bend your left knee and put your heel up. No, flex it. Flex it. Do you know? No. It's a stumbling, rolling process of self-organizing, failures and successes, if you will. Think about this. It's dynamic instability recovering itself moment to moment.
Oh,
that's
so
what
good.
It is. Isn't that
yes.
great?
Yes.
That's who we are. We're actually dynamic instability. So when I hear people talking about their training for alignment and stability, I walk away. Inside me, I walk away. I'm like, okay, great. I'll come and do that when I want to be stable and aligned. Thank you very much. Because we're not stable and we're not aligned and we're not designed to be. We're designed to walk on rough terrain that changes and adapt accordingly. Darwin's survival of the fittest didn't mean survival of the one who could win an Olympic Games. It meant survival of the most appropriate for the terrain they lived in at the time. So if you develop the ability to climb trees like a cheetah, and you're living on a landscape that's desert with no trees, what's the point of having that ability? There isn't one. What you need to be able to do is hold water and run across a plain quickly and chase. Do you see what I'm saying? The terrain does have something, because we are these very adaptable, dynamic, unstable creatures that we want to be able to recover and roll. And you don't have to be at peak fitness to do that. You have to have a confidence in your body's self-awareness. Now, what we do with subtle micro movements, we call it micro movement medicine, is we build through the 5 R's, we call them. Rebound, where we very subtly teach the body how to remember its own blueprint from the outside in. And then we do recoil from the inside out. And then we release unnecessary patterns because we've now established that we can. And then we restore the blueprint. And then we refine. And when you get to refine, it is staggering how many elite athletes can't manage the movements. Now, I'm not an elite athlete and I can't manage the movements. But when I focus on getting through the other parts, it's as if my body drinks in. Thank you. Yes, I remember. And then I had an incident recently where I was wearing Crocs, which I hate and don't advertise for anybody. And I ran up the steps outside my house and my foot came out of the Croc and I slipped and fell. And I bounced and rolled and didn't hurt myself. I should have hurt myself. I didn't hurt myself. My father, when he was 87, he went out with my dog and he came back covered in mud from head to foot. And I went, Dad, have you been playing in the mud with the dog? And he went, no, I went flying. She went one way, I went the other. Going through the gate, there was I said, you all right? I was ready to phone an ambulance. He was laughing. Couldn't care less. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I bounced. And I said, well, you look as if you expected to bounce. And he'd been in my yoga class every week, never missed it. And he said, but it happens to all of us, dear. We're all going to fall over. But his body knew what to do. He just let himself go and rolled. So he was covered in mud. I mean, like literally. But he wasn't afraid of falling because he had in his mind that he's designed to fall and recover. And he just knew he'd recover. He was just like,
That's amazing. I mean, when you hear stories of people in their 80s falling, that is not usually the ending.
No.
Usually the ending is a hip replacement.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. And but let me tell you something else. I know many people in their 30s, and I really don't like the number of people I know of this, who've been absolutely exquisitely beautiful yoga teachers all their lives, and they're having hip replacements. Why? Because they stretch. And the human body is not designed to do that.
Oh. Say more.
It's a liquid crystal matrix that is not, I've got very dear friends with fabulous businesses based on stretching because everybody thinks it's popular and they think the opposite of strength is stretch, So if you don't do Pilates for strength, you do yoga for stretching. And if you do both, it's all magical. No.
Okay, this is a huge myth that you're busting right here, Joanne.
Yeah.
This is a huge myth because, most people I know think that.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, if we have up to this point not really understood what we're made of truly, then it makes sense that we've come to conclusions that are not right and are incorrect.
It is so not right. The idea, there's something in the body, the human body, the geometry of the human body called auxetic property, which basically means when you contract a muscle, it gets longer, not fatten up. It doesn't fatten up, it gets longer. And people go, that's ridiculous. And we've got movies of it. We've got images of it. Nobody wants to believe it. So I'm actually throwing a hand grenade. I'm not just busting a myth. Now, there's stretching and stretching. Pandiculation, which is what an animal does to reset its metabolism after it's been asleep. That's great.
Yes.
Yawning. So when you wake up
this morning, I had my dog at the vet because she was extremely lethargic and she's a puppy, so it was wrong. But I always watch her. She sleeps in her little bed in her crate, which she goes into by herself at night, goes to her little bed. And every morning she comes out, she does a downward dog and like a kind of an upward dog.
Yeah.
And then she shakes. And then she's like, okay, let's go outside. So what did you say she was doing there?
It's called pandiculation. It's basically a yawning stretch. Now, a couple of things to notice with your dog. She doesn't have her heels on the ground when she does downward dog or upward dog. She does it on her toes.
Yes.
So next time somebody tells you to get your heels on the ground in down dog, tell them that you don't want to. First thing.
Okay. Good tip.
Just shrug and go, why?
No.
Why would you stretch the bejesus out of your calf muscles and your hamstrings?
Because that's what I'm thinking. I would put the heel down to get that stretch through the back of the leg that they tell you you're going for.
Yeah. Why?
And that I think I need.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I need it.
Because you've been brought up under a spell that you do. So no.
Okay.
Don't. Your dog doesn't do it. Why would you? Your dog doesn't stand on its heels. And that we've got a different gait pattern. I'm literally throwing a hand grenade here. I'm going to get lambasted. I know I am. But whatever. The thing is, the human body is predicated on something called the monosynaptic reflex arc. It's a very complicated way of saying an anti-stretch mechanism. Why do we need that? Well, think about it. The worst torture in medieval times was to be hung, drawn, and quartered. And quartered meant you had an animal tied on a string to your ankles and wrists, and they ran in 4 different directions. They tore you apart. It's the most painful death. And we try and do that in a yoga class. Why? Everything in the body is a spiral. So if you have a spring and you pull on it and you pull on it and you pull on it, I've got one here. I know we're audio, but
yeah. So you have like a little slinky.
Yeah, it's just a little slinky, and I'm just pulling it. So that's what we want muscles to be able to do.
Right.
And connective tissue, because all muscle is myofascia. It's not muscle on its own. There's nothing separate about muscles and fascia. There's just nothing. The fascia's everywhere. So I know we're taught that it's the covering of the muscle. It's the ectomysium or the endomysium and the perimysium, and no, it's everywhere. You cannot, you take a pair of tweezers to a cadaveric specimen, and there is not 1 millimeter of muscle that you can pull that isn't connected by connective tissue to the fiber next to it. And it's within the fiber. It's microscopic. So it's everywhere. And so if you imagine it's spiral in nature, because under a microscope it can be seen as spiral, we want that to spring, right? That's its blueprint. So in order that it springs, it's got to be connected at both ends, and it's got to be able to, I'm just playing with a slinky now between my two hands, and I'm just letting it open and close. That's motion. That's what we do.
Okay.
All the time.
Right.
Yeah?
So you pull the spiral opens, the spiral closes.
Compressing it and it closes, tensioning it, compressing it and it closes. It's got a lovely rhythm. And you can imagine in a very complex organization that could, and you know why babies love those little bouncy chairs you put them in that hang in a door frame because it's like being home inside and out. It's just heaven. So let's say we overcompress this by spending so much time in the gym that we squish and we grow the muscle bellies in the gym loads and loads and loads. Can you imagine that if that got too big for its boots, it would pop and we'd have a problem? So you can overcompress tissue. But you can also, I'm now pulling a slinky apart, pull and pull and pull and pull and pull. And if you go past its natural range, it won't spring back. Look, we've now got a kink in the coil.
Right.
And it will never go
spring back together into the almost like a little tube.
Yeah. So that's the overstretched ballerina who in her 60s doesn't have enough compression force in her spine to be able to stand lying down because there's so much pain. She has to have something inserted into the spine to make the spine more stiff because it's gone too soft when she's aged because it hasn't sprung back. And if you overstretch the joints at the hip doing the splits when you're not designed to, it's overstretched. So then I'll have somebody on my table who, when I say, can you do a leg raise, they can drop their leg over their face if they want to there's no tension. Or rather, there's insufficient compression, in fact, to hold that joint. It shouldn't be able to go all that way. It's not an asset.
Wow.
So it would be like taking your dog who's done her lovely little downward dog when she wakes up, and then getting her to put her legs in the splits and taking one of her legs all the way up. As you just think about it, you wince. That would be cruel, right? Yeah, because the physiology is not, and I know we don't have 4 legs. I get that. But none of our legs are supposed to have that range of motion. It's not healthy. And so when you go beyond physiological range and or anatomical range, or we call it fasciategral range, meaning the spring loading is being compromised, over time, you can't restore that. We can release overcompressed tissue more easily than we can restore overstretched tissue. And so there's all definitions of stretching. But when we do the kind of yoga that stretches and then waits for muscle creep to stretch even more, that's designed by somebody who doesn't understand the monosynaptic reflex arc, which is the body's way of managing itself. What do I mean by that? It is predicated on an anti-stretch mechanism system. So in your gut, when a ball of food gets into your gut, it stretches the gut squeezes immediately as a reaction, a reflex, and that's how it's pushed through the whole gut tube. Well, that's the rule throughout the body. Don't stretch me, there's something wrong. So think about it. If you're sitting in your car and you're getting sleepy and your head nods and your head nods and your head nods, and then suddenly your head comes up again, that's because the little, we call them fascia tuning pegs at the back of your skull, have suddenly got stretched, and your body knows that you're driving and you're supposed to be looking out the window and your eyes are supposed to be on the horizon, and it will self-correct. Not always, but it should. And we override that reflex. So we're not designed
when we force a stretch.
Exactly. So you can go into the length of a limb, just like your dog does with dog, yawning. Yawning decelerates the tissue at the same time as you accelerate into the movement. So it snuggles you back. It stops you from overextending. It's a very complex thing, and It's a big rabbit hole, Meredith. But basically,
this is fascinating.
Force yourself. Don't force yourself.
What if you are, or doing a yoga class or any physical class, and there's, you do some stretching after an exercise. How, if we are listening to our liquid crystal whispers, how do we know when, like, okay, that's far enough, don't stretch any further?
Well, it's interesting. When you use micro movements wisely, the body becomes really super intelligent. And sometimes you find yourself standing on the edge of a step and dropping into your heels because you really want that length. And it's almost like that yawn. And you might do a few of those and think, oh, wow, that was delicious. And what you're doing is allowing different myofascia to sort of glide on each other, and you're waking the tissue up. But you'll find very little of that is required, and it's sufficient. The body doesn't count. The body doesn't do 5 reps of that, 10 reps of that, 40 of that, 100 of that. It doesn't know what you're talking about. That's imposed. It's imposed logic. And as a liquid crystal matrix, you can, I can't explain, but when you start listening to it and you start trusting it, here's the magic. The confidence changes, the clarity changes, the internal dialogue is heard, and your body behaves as if it's being listened to. And you become, I believe, more congruent. It's not about, I know what I want now, I'm going to get my own way. It's not about a higher level of entitlement. It's a generosity of spirit that's listening to itself. And then you sit with somebody and you might just think, like this happened to me today. I had some news from someone in my family last night, and I was really, really quite shocked. And it was just like, okay, what do I do here? And I realized if I could just be still for a minute, just give myself permission to be shocked. And I thought, okay, what can I do? I thought, I'm going to call them. And I just made that call with no expectation of being answered. All I said was, I don't know what to say, but how can I help? And they answered, and we came to a kind of a resolution, and we shared the shock and the difficulty and the new set of circumstances and what could they do and who could support who and what and where. And then we were done. And it was, I kind of, after that, sat with this discomfort because I needed to get that out of my system. So just as my body knew to sit still beforehand, after the call, I had to get up and move. And it was just, I walked around the house. I went up and down the stairs a couple of times. It was much too cold to go out. But it was that kind of moment to moment awareness of when do I need to be still? When do I need to move? And really what I'm inviting here, Meredith, is if we think of movement as all around the clock, whatever numbers work for you that are the fastest and the slowest and the stillness and the movement, that we fill in the whole clock. And I think we've got about 10 to 15 minutes missing generally on our clock, where we're not sedentary, we're not meditating, we're not sleeping, we're not sitting at the table eating, we're not sitting at a computer, we're not sitting in a car. We're not sedentary, and we're also not trying to get to peak performance, even gentle yoga and shavasana. No, there's an in-between place that is largely missing from our repertoire. And that's where micro movements come in. And that's really what we're addressing here, that whatever you do, we work with champion athletes that can carry each other up mountains. And they literally do for their training, but they can't stand on one leg for more than a nanosecond. And they're like, well, why would you want me to do that? Well, because when your movements are more refined, you're going to be faster. You're going to react quicker. You're going to get out of the way faster. You're going to be in the way you want to be faster and slicker, because those micro tunings are available to you. And oh my God, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, the difference it makes. And the dancers, one of the things we've noticed working with dancers is, and this is my colleague, Paul Thornley. He's just such an amazing man. He's so brilliant. And he's a martial artist of decades of experience, but also a neuromuscular therapist, and just an amazing guy, very advanced in Pilates instructor trainer. And so between us, the yoga and the Pilates, we get to handle all these questions, and no one's saying don't do yoga and don't do Pilates. This is a way of adding a kind of seasoning to becoming a master chef. So rather than a sort of a Mackie D outlet where you've got the same thing coming out every single time, you've got somewhere that you can profile your dishes to the person you're cooking for. Does that make sense? And what Paul has found with these young ballet dancers, he was telling me, was that a lot of them, when they finish doing their posture or their poses or their movements, they then collapse back into this sort of default exhausted state. So they sort of go from peak stretch
to
collapse,
slumped over.
Yeah, because it hurts and it takes the most enormous effort. And he's had this fantastic example of working with half a group of, I think, 12, 13-year-olds. And we're talking about top level work here. And the group he's worked with can maintain their spring and hold their posture and stay in the movements, the leaps and the springs and the spins that little bit longer without the fatigue. And then when they walk around the room and wait to be called on to do their thing, there's no slump. That is magic. And that's where, to go back to where we started, this liquid crystal matrix has been reminded of itself and can be called to do what you want it to do without a delay. You don't have to think about it. It just holds itself ready for the next adaptation.
Right. And even if you have no instruction in micro movements or in anything, but we make that shift to envisioning ourselves as liquid crystal and not as like, oh, this body, I'm supposed to make it stronger before I go into menopause or whatever.
Well, no,
personal example, right?
That. No, but yes.
No, and I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying like how I think about it is like, oh, I have to do this thing. I have to make this part of this structure stronger, as opposed to thinking about, okay, I am liquid crystal. I
am the strength. I am the courage. We're of the heart, and courage means from the heart. Cœur in French is heart. And we're courageous, and our bodies are cyclical. Female bodies are more cyclical than male. They just are. They're just based on tides and cycles. And the male body is more continuous at a level. It's almost more stoic in some ways. We're very different because we have different biological requirements. The embryo that you were was present in your mother's embryonic form inside your grandmother.
Crazy.
I mean, literally, the embryo has all the eggs she's ever going to produce inside her embryonic body. Now, this is not a discussion about male or female, masculine and feminine, right or wrong. We all have masculine and feminine aspects to us. But the hormonal cycles, where we talk about menopause and perimenopause, for example, are really important features in how we address that. And I bow to some of the people I know in the field. Menopause Pilates, Dinah Simon, absolutely brilliant. All kinds of people that work with that system, but you can't work with it the same way as you would it's not about just go to the gym and pump iron and do 5 of those and 10 of those. It may be for you ideal, as it is for me, to use weights. I'm hypermobile naturally. So if I do too much stretching, I'm in deep, deep trouble. Deep trouble. And I started my career in yoga and I found out the hard way. And the more yoga I was doing, the more fatigued I was. I'm like, why? I'm supposed to be, it's amazing. I'm so bendy. I'm wonderful. No, you're not. You're actually not transmitting forces intelligently through your body. They're actually leaking out of your limbs. So I had to gather everything in and do a little bit more strength-oriented work till I found MMIA and found that the way we work with bouncing and rebound and recoil, it just transforms everything, because you get both the push and the pull at the same time. It's a super intelligent way of working. Yeah. And you add that to the movements. So you modify the movements for the person using these micro sequences. And it works because you're restoring the blueprint.
And I just feel so much more of a holistic sense of myself sitting in this paradigm with you, as opposed to getting advice, which is important. I do need to start lifting weights. But it's like, it feels like it feels separate, as opposed to listening to the language of the liquid crystal and what does it need and what am I doing in between, and how, like, each moment of the day, what is happening.
Well, I've got another one of these under my feet. So, I'm never symmetrical. I'm jiggling my foot on a ball, and I'm not still. That's not fidgeting. It's not the same thing. When I'm doing my spiritual exercises and my meditation work, trust me, I'm still. But when I'm at my desk, because I have to spend a lot of time at my desk, I'm an author, you write, it's very difficult to, I could dictate when I'm walking, I suppose, but it's tricky. I want to be where I am when I'm walking. It just gives you this awareness that you're not switched on or switched off. And that's the error, I feel, in our field, that we're either on or off. We're in the gym or we're resting.
I get that's sort of, that's where I was trying to get, I think, with how I feel like just understanding this paradigm through your eyes. It's like, yes, that's it. It's not like on or off, this or that. It's always all the time.
It's a volume, and you've got 0 to 100 on the dial. And the thing is, there's patches that we don't use. It's like tuning a radio. So imagine, when you get a radio, there's no music in there. There's just a box with all these things, and it's got a frequency. And if you get the frequency right, you get to hear the London Symphony Orchestra playing Beethoven's Fifth Concerto, and it's just, your room is filled with the orchestra. They're there, right? The result of them is there. And you tune it. And if it's just one tiny nanomillimeter off tune, the frequency will crackle. But when it's on, everything else falls away and you become the music. It's of that ilk. And because we're a liquid crystal matrix, and when people say that doesn't mean water, there's no water in the body as such, other than urine. We don't slosh around. A liquid crystal is a range of densities and textures, which is why that piece I read you from May Wan Ho is in a chapter called Fascial Architecture in my book, because it varies according to texture. It's very simple. If you put your hands together and look at the palm of your hand, you've got a texture on your palm. And if you look on the back of your hand, it's completely different. And if you go to put the backs of your hands to pick up a glass of water, it's next to impossible to do it without dropping the water. And yet to do it this way, the way we would normally do it, it's like the padding's there, the traction's there, the grip nuances are there. It's all there because we're designed to bring our hands together like that and oppose our thumbs and fingers and hold a cup that way. Yeah, that's our nature, but it's a completely different texture on one side of a hand to the other. And everywhere in our body, it's different textures. And I'm not talking about the perfect archetypal AI drawn, model body that's perfect, whatever we think perfect is in this era. It's changed over the centuries. I'm talking about the texture of each part of us is designed to do what it's designed to do, but by doing it, it's designed to do that. So, for example, let's imagine you went barefoot. I'm not recommending this necessarily, not in our societies. But if people go barefoot over the summer, the skin on their feet tends to harden. Well, there's good reason for that.
Yeah. I'm barefoot most of the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that we let that do that because we want that to protect you. Make sense?
Yes. So we're adapting.
We adapt, but we have all this massive range of softness to strength. And some of our tissues have the tensile strength of steel, and some of our tissues are designed to be soft. And if you look on the back of your arm, for example, the tissue very, very near the surface is really glidy on what's underneath it. But if you go to one of the bones, you can feel the bone. It glides differently over the bone. So it's not uniform. It has all this range of variability in it. And when we do the same movements over and over again, we're trying to train it to be same. And it can't always do that. And so sometimes some exercises are no different to repetitive strain injuries, if you think about it. But until it hurts, we don't call it repetitive strain injury.
Right.
So
oh my gosh.
It's just all about
it's a whole new world.
It is. Yeah. And I'm not particularly good at it, but I thank God for it because, after I had my surgery 3 years ago and my diagnosis of breast cancer, I couldn't move my right arm at all. It was horrible. And I thought, well, I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And I gave myself a 12-minute a day practice. And I thought, this is going to take 2 years. Okay, get over yourself. And I put myself to it for 12 minutes. And then I started being really kind and made it a sort of a spiritual practice. So I did my meditation, then I got up and did my 12-minute sequence. And then I just made myself a nice drink, cup of tea, whatever. And I started to make it a sort of ritual. And I was absolutely stunned. Within 12 weeks, I could do full weight bearing yoga. I had no cording and tethering. I had no scars particularly bothering me. And it was like, oh, this works. Oh my goodness. So I don't want to be a peak performance athlete. I've got no desire, but I have recovered amazingly.
Yeah. And that was 12 minutes of micro movement.
Mm-hmm. I did a little sequence every day and I charted it. I study spiritual science and that's part of how we do it. You turn it into a hypothesis and a method and a benefit. And I was really kind to myself. I measured in hearts. So 1 red heart was totally broken wing and 3 purple hearts. I used the colors of the rainbow in a sequence. 3 purple hearts I couldn't do numbers and metrics. I was too stunned at being ill. But just by doing that little heart chart, I call it my heart chart, I couldn't believe how quickly each grade, I gave it a sort of, when I was at 3 orange hearts, I could move my arm by itself without painkillers. Do you see what I mean? I had a grade for every 3 hearts per color. And in 12 weeks, I was at 3 purple hearts doing full weight bearing yoga and nobody could tell which side I'd had the surgery on. And nobody was more stunned than me. Seriously. Because I know this sounds crazy, Meredith, but you do all this work and you do all this study and you treat all these people and you do all this work and it's quite a sort of heady process. Am I doing the right thing? Have I served these people the work, or I'm teaching or whatever? And when it was me, it was like, how do I stop blaming myself for getting sick? What did I do wrong? Because that's what you do. You think, well, I know I'm a liquid crystal matrix. Did I eat the wrong food? Did I breathe the wrong air? Did I live in the wrong climate? Am I, mean to my mom? Is this karma for shouting at my sister when I was 5? I worship my mum and my sister, I might tell you, but you know what I'm saying. And is this recrimination for that time when I got really angry with my son or whatever the story is? We do that. We're human.
Yes.
God bless our hearts.
And the more we know about health or wellness or liquid crystals or whatever it is, the more we feel guilty or that we did something wrong when we get sick or injured or go through something like that. So that's a beautiful thing to bring up to remind everybody. life
Well,
is life.
life is life. And, it's all very well that we want to look good and we want our hair to be beautifully colored and beautiful shape and length. And we've got, we've got to look right and feel right and all those things. We put such pressure on ourselves. And then inside, when you find yourself sitting with a diagnosis that you don't want and you can't imagine how you got it, I felt like a complete hypocrite. It was like, what am I doing in the health and wellness industry, in the healing arts, when I can't heal myself? And then this voice in my head said, maybe you can. Maybe you can. Now, I don't know if I've healed myself. I have to be tested and checked every year. I don't know. But I do know that I had to forgive myself for being human, forgive myself for knowing so much about health and healing and needing health and healing. And my big lesson was, oh my goodness, it was so huge. I had to learn to ask for help. I had to learn to say, I can't cope. Can you help me? I can't tell you how hard it was. It's stuck in my throat. Because I'm, Mrs. Capable. And the humility that comes, totally. And I demand stuff of myself that I would never ask another human being to deal with. And then I remembered the training I've been trained in for the last decade, which is take care of yourself first so you can take care of others. Don't hurt yourself, don't hurt others. Turn every stumbling block into a stepping stone. Those are the 3 spiritual laws I live by. And I had to turn it into a stepping stone. So my fascial magic in action it is. I hope I did.
And you did. Well, now you're bringing such incredible work to the world and in collaborating with all these amazing people and working together and forming a network and trainings and books. It's really incredible, Joanne.
Well, back at you, Meredith Oak. I just think your work's incredible, and I hear so much about it. And I've known you for a while, but the person, Peter Bort, that introduced me to you, I thank you, Peter. Much love. And he's a wonderful man. He's in the same spiritual movement that I'm in, and he's just been so generous and so kind. And he said, you two have got to work together because at some point, and I know this is true for you too, because you've told me, nothing thrills me more than when somebody that I've facilitated tells me what an amazing difference they made to somebody else. We've got, there's a lot of work to do out there.
Yes.
Doesn't that make your day?
Yes, absolutely. And you see the ripples go out from person to person to person. It might be something small, and it just has a huge impact on someone's life. And everybody, I always include everyone listening, because you don't land on this podcast if you're not, a conduit of this power in some capacity in your life, in your community, in your family, in your own self, truly. So as we wrap up, could you let people know if they're interested in your work? I know for sure I've had people tell me they want to study with you after listening to your previous podcast. So your training is online? There's maybe some live workshops coming. And can people work with you or the people you've trained privately?
Well, how we work at the moment, we have, you can go to my website, joanneavison.com, and you'll see the books, you'll see the podcasts, you'll see links to the YouTube channel, you'll see links to the courses. And the gold course that we have, My Fascial Magic in Action, Paul and I teach that together, and we teach it in person. And we work with people every week. We have live coaching calls. It's just a gorgeous community. It's fabulous. And then there are other ways of working with us. If you go to the website and go under books, you'll get a free chapter of Yoga, Fascia, Anatomy and Movement, my first book. And then I did a series of workshops from that, which I'm creating into a course that has a waiting list at the moment. And then Myofascial Magic in Action was the first of those masterclasses. So all of them are being turned into books and programs. So it's a process, but gradually we're not creating it. It's creating itself through us in a way that we've got feedback from just some of the most fabulous teachers out there. So when people, we have a free webinar online and you can watch and get a sense of what we're talking about. And when people talk to us now, what we're able to do is say, well, I want to try this out before I learn with you. And in most countries, there's someone they can try it out with. And we're also, through demand, bringing some short workshops out that we can do together that have people experience this work. Because not everybody wants to learn the whole protocol and become a teacher of it. But a lot of people want to differentiate their yoga or Pilates or personal training or athletic training, whatever. It's all sorts. It's, as I said to you earlier, it's really it's the icing on the cake. It's the special sauce and the seasoning that makes you a master chef. But it's
integrated into whatever anyone else is doing, whether it's yoga, Pilates, occupational therapy, whatever it is, physical therapy, chiropractic. This integrates into that.
All of it. And we have a lot of manual therapists who use it to give their clients homework, just little pieces, so their clients can then try something and then bring it back. It's safe for all ages and stages of fitness. And I'm just so excited to see the breadth of its application. It's gentle. It's what I call fascia whispering. And I just want to turn everybody into fascia whisperers, because we'd all love ourselves and each other and be more connected if we had that resource.
Yeah.
I think
so too. I think, you know, what you were saying before about the heady experience, like I've spent most of my life in my head and only come into my body gradually as an adult. It's like, oh. And so this, you know, you on the head, this, this conversation it's very embodied, right? Like we are giving people a way back, giving ourselves a way back into our bodies.
Yeah. It's an invitation.
It's kind of nice in here. I kind of like it. I was so much more comfortable in my head. I had everything under control in there. But now I'm like, oh, all right.
The soul works in present time. And then what happens is, I think you get fat minutes. I think there's fat minutes and thin minutes. You know, there's thin minutes when you're in a hurry and you're late. The minutes are very thin. And when you're sitting in a car and there's traffic, the minutes are very fat. They go on forever. And what I think can happen is that when you become present, especially with a little ball in your back, because, you know, you're on, like I'm in the podcast, and every now and again, this ball in my back is just going, are you okay? How are your shoulder blades? It's like a little, it's a whisper, it's an impulse. And it just brings you back to your center. And it's easy. It's so easy.
That's the secret. That's a great secret. Let's end there. It's so easy. We just know. Once we know, it's simple, like going outside and getting some sunlight. It's so easy. Joanne, thank you so much for coming back and sharing. This was delightful, and I learned so many things. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It really is a joy, Meredith.
Woohoo! You made it to the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploratory adventure into new realms. Your energy and support are building a different world, and I am so grateful to be on this journey with you. Take care, and thanks.